to my channel. Today we're going to talk about something that came up a few days ago when a person asked me, how can you still make your meetings and workshops so effective on Zoom? And talking about effectiveness, what I mean in this case is meetings and workshops in which people feel engaged, they feel they have space, it's interactive, they feel that time flies by without getting tired or distracted because it's happening on Zoom. And the reason why this person asked me this is that we run workshops that are also full immersion workshops. So 3 days in a row, 10 hours per day. And initially we also were a bit scared when we had to move from live courses in person to courses on Zoom. But actually they turned out to be very, very effective anyway. So we analyzed, okay, what is working? What can I make better? And after a few months now, we can say that we have a good recipe for success. So what I'm going to do during this video is to share with you those tips and tricks that you need to put in place if you want your workshops, your meetings on Zoom to be as effective as if you were in person. There are two kinds of situations that we will consider. The first one is intrinsic situations. What does it mean? Situations that are intrinsic to the fact that the meeting is happening on Zoom. By being on Zoom, certain dynamics change compared to having the meeting in person, and that will apply to all meetings. We will also talk about situations that are specific situations, like how to make sure that you deal with people that unmute themselves and have background noise, or how do you make sure that you deal with people that refuse to put the video on, and so you're just finding yourself talking to a black screen. So we're going to face all of this, and we're going to start with the intrinsic situations. The problem when we are on Zoom is that the interaction is limited. The energy that you can fill the room with, you don't have a room to fill. So you have a screen, and you have people that you can't really create the same connection with. So it's very, very important to understand that that's normal. We need to make peace with it. We can't expect it to be exactly as when we are in person. But this doesn't mean that it cannot be effective. One recommendation that I would start with is that I see a lot of people, and if you're one of them, don't take it personally, but change this thing, find a different solution if possible, that hold their workshops or meetings on a phone or iPad, tablet of any kind. Now, I know that at times your computer may be out of charge, or maybe you don't want to use it or whatever, but unless it is really, really necessary, make sure that you use your computer. And this for one very specific reason out of everything else, is that on the computer you have the possibility to see more people at once. Of course, if your meeting has 2 people, you can use the iPad as well, it doesn't matter. But when you have a lot of people at your workshop, a lot of people at your meeting, it's very important in order to keep the connection and the energy high to be able to see these people. So a computer allows you to have on my computer there's 25 people that you can see at once, and that creates more connection than needing to scroll every moment because you can see 2-4 people at once. So this is a very, very important recommendation. Second recommendation before we start is whenever creating the workshop, whenever thinking about the meeting, if you have something that you need to share, like slides or screen share of some sort, make sure you reduce it as much as possible. Why? Because when on Zoom you share your screen, what happens? That you have the possibility only to see a few people, and so you again lose that connection that you would have by seeing all the people. So reduce it as much as possible. I know that at times it is needed, and so in that case share, but whenever it is not needed, try to reduce it. One thing that I do when I have to share necessarily is that I use 2 devices. So I have my computer, I have my iPad, and from my iPad what I do is that I share my screen. So I log in from my iPad only to share my screen, and I put my slides or my whiteboard if I need to write something from the iPad, while I keep the people on the computer, so that then I go on gallery mode and I drag it, make it big, and I still see all the people. I don't see what I'm sharing, but I don't care because I see it on the iPad, and I keep seeing the reactions of people. because seeing how people react to what you're saying is very, very important, and that doesn't change if you're in person or on Zoom. So it's very, very fundamental to find solutions to see people as much as you can. Talking about seeing people's reaction introduces a very, very important concept, which is the concept of interaction. Any kind of meeting or workshop, if you really want it to be effective, needs to have some sort of interaction. At times, interaction could be having people answering. At times, the interaction is having some exercises that people need to do. At times, the interaction is making sure that people think deeply about something that you have just shared so that they don't get distracted. Interaction is what helps you not to have people distracting themselves. So, how do you do that on Zoom? There's a lot of ways, but you need to structure your workshop, structure your meeting in a way that allows you to use all the solutions that you have at hand. For example, one thing that I love doing whenever there is an exercise with people is to use breakout rooms. And having breakout rooms is something that needs to be organized. And logistically, it can be very annoying to be watching a meeting, waiting because the host needs to adjust and put people in breakout rooms, and it takes a while, and you see that they're trying to do it. So whenever you're alone, of course, if that's the only possibility, do it, okay? But if you have someone that you can put as a co-host or as a host and you are the co-host, ask them to create the breakout rooms so that you can keep talking while the breakout rooms will be created. This is a small thing, but it makes a huge difference because it gives people that perception of having a flawless event that just flows and that doesn't get them distracted. Another thing that you can do in order to have people interact and be more engaged is to ask them to write or talk about their thoughts, their questions, and so on. So there are two tools to do this. Three. Number one, asking them to raise their hand. Now, usually when you're in a workshop and you ask people to raise their hand, what happens? They raise their hand and you see them. Now, if you have up to 25 people, for me, maybe for your screen it's different, but people that you see in your screen on Zoom at the event, you can do the same. So you can ask them just to raise their hand and it's fine because you can see all of them. However, whenever you have more than that number, it's impossible for you to see all of them at the same time. So if you use one screen, so you may need to go and slide and from one screen to the other and so on. So what should you do? You need to train people at the beginning of your workshop on how to do. And one thing that you can tell them is that, okay, given that I want to give space to your questions, whenever you have a question, rather than raising your hand like this, that I may not see because you may be in the screen that I'm not looking at in that moment, what can you do? Go to participants, and from participants, when you click on participants, you will see that you have the option raise your hand. At that point, click there, and I call it the virtual hand, and it allows them to click on it, and you will see who has raised their hand, and it won't disappear until you or them you lower it. So it's perfect. It's a great function of Zoom that helps a lot, but in order to use it, you need to teach people to do it because a lot of people have never used it, okay? They're not used to it. So just tell them so that they know what the rule of the game will be. The other thing that you can do, the second thing, is to just invite people to use the chat, but make sure that you find a balance, okay? Why? Because if they start chatting too much, they're not listening to you, and you get distracted because you're trying to talk and you're trying to read, and maybe if you're like me, you can't really see that far, you need to go close to the screen, and so in order to read it, it's a bit of a mess. But if instead of doing that, you just tell them to, every now and then you ask a specific question that they need to answer in the chat, then that creates engagement for everyone. The third thing that you can do is to ask them to interact with the emojis that just show their involvement in that moment. So whenever they want to show their support to someone, they can click an emoji, and that is just something that keeps people engaged. Remember that when people follow a workshop or a meeting on Zoom, they have tons of distractions next to them. It's a different environment. You allow yourself not to be there, to have listen, work, answer that email, you see that notification, and then, oh, the dog is coming, and I am hungry, let me get a snack. All things that you wouldn't allow yourself if you were in an actual room. So you need to give them reasons to be present, to participate. And these are tricks that you can use for that purpose. And now I want to talk about two situations that some people find very, very annoying and that need to be dealt with. One is all the background noise that people make, and two is people that keep not having their video on, and so you find yourself talking to black screens and you don't know what to do and how to invite them to just put their video on. Now, talking about people, background noise, and so on, the action to take is very, very simple. So you just need to mute them. At times, though, when you have a lot of people, you may get a bit lost in finding who to mute, and so you need to make sure that you are very at ease in using two functions. Number one, there's the mute all function. So if you click on participants, you will see all the list of participants on the right. I will put a screenshot here so you can understand what I mean. You will see all the list of participants, and underneath it there will be mute all. So if you click there, then you mute yourself. That's fine, you can talk. So very easy to do. At times though, you don't want to mute yourself because you're talking about something important. You don't want to have any moment of silence. So what can you do in that case? Don't try and look for all the people that are talking in the gallery mode. But do what? You can click on participants again, and I will show you there. The people that are talking will be the first of the list. So you will find them immediately and you can just mute them from there. And it's going to be super, super fast so that you don't get distracted from what you're talking about. And that's very important because especially if you're being your own host and you're doing everything, you don't want to get distracted. You want to be focused on your message. The last thing, and so the second case that I'm going to discuss, is when people have no video on and you find yourself talking with this black screen where there's maybe one or two people with the video on, and it's so frustrating because it seems like you're talking by yourself. In that case, what can you do? Of course, invite people to put the video on. So be kind and explain that the experience will be nicer for them as well if they put the video on, because they will feel more engaged, they will learn more, they will be able to ask more questions. It will just be a better experience for them. However, be also understanding of those people that cannot put the video on because they have connection problems or some situations that don't allow them to put the screen on. So in that case, make sure that you point out with them that interaction is key. So they should be the ones writing in the chat, putting the emojis, using all the ways they have to keep engaged, also if you're not seeing them. Because by doing this, they will still be part of the workshop, they will still give you their energy, also if they cannot put the video on for any specific reason, okay? But this is important because running a workshop where people are not there drains your energy. You talk by yourself for hours and you're there and you don't see anything, people don't interact. It can be very, very frustrating. If you set the rules beforehand, if you let them understand how to engage, if you let them understand that that's something that they're doing for themselves, not just for you, it will be so much easier, so much more enjoyable, and the energy will be high the whole time. Try this and you will see how your meetings will become much more amazing, interactive, entertaining, and you will receive great feedback from the people that are listening in. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment below if you have any other tricks or tips that you apply in order to keep the interaction high during your workshops. And if you are interested in seeing how to speak in public, online, in a way that's engaging and entertaining, make sure you watch this video here that will appear here. If you'd like to get in touch, my links are all in the description. See you in the next video.